Hello and welcome to this short video talking about the answers to the Matters Rising 1 quiz set. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who took part. We've had over 160 responses on Google Forms. Originally started thinking, there might be only 10 people interested and set up SurveyMonkey originally, but quickly went past the 10 mark on there. So hence moved on to Google Forms, free and easy. Just want to say a big thank you to people who've helped me with this. So Lorcan Collins was the impetus, quick conversation on Twitter. Mick O'Farrell's always pushing me to do some more on Easter Rising. Connor O'Donohan, Derek and Darren, who've shared with various groups on Facebook. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Big shout out for all the people who've helped right the way through lockdown. So essential listening is Lorcan's podcast, Revolutionary Island, also Donald Fallon's Three Castles Burning, and regularly following Mick O'Farrell on Twitter. And then you probably realise there's quite a few Facebook groups around. Connor runs the Early Irish Militaria Focus from 1916-46 group. Derek and Darren run the Dublin 1916 to 1923. And myself and a couple of the family run John Doe's Story. So quite a few people have provided answers from all of those groups. So thank you very much, everyone. If you haven't already seen on Twitter or Facebook, the powerhouse that is Liz Gillis is doing a presentation tomorrow night on the 4th Battalion. The Dublin Brigade. Always worth listening to. Liz brings a whole range of enthusiasm that is unparalleled, basically, to Easter Rising, Customs House, Civil War, War of Independence, all of that sort of stuff. So always worthwhile booking on anything that Liz is doing. So on to the answers to the various questions. So this question caused most problems, which was a surprise. So straightforward, who was the director of organisation for the Irish Volunteers. No real tricks here. Just 4 people who are heavily involved. The probably distractor there is Michael Collins. He wasn't that senior at the time of the Easter Rising. The other guys were. If you want more, head over to Lorcan Collins' book, the 1916 Rising Handbook. Quite a nice read, lots of facts in there. Next question was about the Plough and Stars flag and where was that flown during the Easter Rising. There's a good book out by Michael Kenny on the various flags that were raised around Dublin during the Easter Rising. This particular one was of interest to James Connolly, and his nemesis, William Martin Murphy, owned the Imperial Hotel, and it's believed that that's why it was put on there to cop a snoop at William Martin Murphy. So Imperial Hotel for that particular question. Okay, a good book on Mauser rifles generally is from a guy called Neil Grant. He's not an Easter Rising enthusiast. He's more into tanks and weaponry and what have you, but it's a good book. A lot more detail than just Easter Rising, so it may not be a book that you want to think about purchasing, etc. Big disadvantage with the Howth Mauser is it only had the ability to load in 1 round of ammunition at a time, compared to, say, the British Lee Enfield SMLE. That generally had a magazine capacity of 10. Well, 11 could be used at times. Some of the older versions had this device called a cutoff. You could run the Lee Enfield in single shot mode, and that could 11. 5, some of the German rifles had 5 rounds and some of the Italians as well, but Howth Mauser, single shot. Okay, so this question was about army barracks closest to the GPO. Now, I didn't list all of the barracks in Dublin, only a few. And if you're not aware, Dublin Castle's over here, Ship Street Barracks is here, GPO is here, so the answer is Ship Street Barracks. Richmond Barracks is way over here. Marlborough Barracks is just up here by the Phoenix Park. You've got Wellington Barracks over here heading over towards Harold's Cross. Portobello Barracks is just across the way, and you've got things like Beggars Bush Barracks is just over this side. So for this question, the answer was, yeah, if you knew a map and what have you. Now there is another barracks up here, Linen Hall Barracks. That was a very small outpost. I think, if I remember right, that was Paycore. That was actually burnt by the volunteers coming up from the area around North King Street forecourts. It could potentially have been closer. However, I've not put that on because primarily it wasn't filled with troops who would pick up arms and go and fight against volunteers. That was my reason for discounting that. So Ship Street Barracks was the nearest in terms of armed troops effectively. Okay, so quite a few aliases used during the Easter Rising before and after. James E. Landy was a name used by Sir Roger Casement. I think this was when he was traveling from America over to Germany early on. Tom Clark had used an alias when he came over from America to England for the dynamiting campaign. If I remember right, that was he used the name Wilson. I'm not aware of any aliases used by Robert Monteith or Darrell Figgis. So that one I've just left Sir Roger Casement. And if you want to see a bit more about the workings of Roger Casement and the trial, the 1916 Rebellion Handbook has a fair bit of information on that one. Okay, a bit of an odd one here. I suspect most people wouldn't know this, but actually quite a few did. So Liberty Hall used to be a hotel, and it was originally called the Northumberland Hotel. I suspect its business declined after the building of the Loop Line. Not sure about that one, but yeah, the name originally was the Northumberland Hotel. And the way I remember it, obviously, is we've got activities over at Mount Street Bridge, Northumberland Road. So that's how I keep it in my brain, that it's Northumberland. Okay, as you probably know, there was an armed ship bringing weaponry over from Germany to County Kerry for arms to be distributed to volunteers for the Easter Rising. It was originally a British ship called the Castro. This was owned by the Wilson Line, a Hull-based shipping line, and it was captured by the Germans at the outbreak of World War I. It was travelling in the Kiel Canal as war was declared. It was taken, the crew were interned for the duration of the war. The ship was renamed the SMS Liebau for use in German service. And then in April 1916, it set sail from Germany, heading to Ireland, and was disguised as a Norwegian ship called the Ord. There was another ship, the real ship called the Ord, that was sunk in 1917. Okay, throwing a few names here. Obviously, the main combatants on the Republican side, Cwm Mawn, the women's organisation, ICA, James Connolly, Irish Volunteers, Patrick Pearse, etc. You then had a whole range of other organisations that were out and about. So Dublin University Officers Training Corps, very definitely not fighting for Irish independence. Ditto the Irish Association of Volunteer Training Corps, so the Gorgeous Rex effectively. And then the Loyal Dublin Volunteers weren't active at the time of the Easter Rising. They were a UVF offshoot or a UVF aligned group. There were 2 battalions of these at the outset of World War I. Many enlisted into the British Army at the outbreak of the war. It disbanded sometime in 1915. Quite a few people joined the Irish Association of Volunteer Training Corps, but it didn't actually take part in the Easter Rising. So Loyal Dublin Volunteers, there's a lot of stuff going on about trying to make that a bigger app and what have you, but really it's not, ignore it. The main one I was looking for is the correct answer here. There were a few guys from Hibernian Rifles who took part with the Irish Volunteers, ICA, etc., and Cwm Mawn, a couple of guys based in the GPO. Again, Lorcan's book will have more details if you want to pick up a copy and find out more. Okay, as you're well aware, the City Hall garrison, that was one of the earliest shooting incidents. Constable James O'Brien outside Dublin Castle was shot by Sean Connolly, who was leading the group. Connolly himself was killed shortly after that. And then command of this garrison was taken over by Sean O'Reilly, who himself was then shot and killed. So command then devolved down to the next senior officer, and that was actually Dr. Kathleen Lynn. Obviously, the other names I've thrown in, they're fairly familiar names from the Easter Rising. Margaret Skinner, more active around the Stephen's Green area, not really involved in City Hall. Elizabeth O'Farrell, obviously GPO based, and Constance Markovitz, again, mainly Stephen's Green, but I think she had been backwards and forwards to the City Hall, but she didn't take command. Okay, one of my favourite items is talking about the artillery that's used in Dublin. A lot of myths about it. So this was a set of 4 artillery pieces, 18-pounders, quite light artillery. The British had 13-pounder, which would be generally used by the Royal Horse Artillery, 18-pounder, which was used by the Royal Field Artillery, and then the big heavy stuff was actually used by the Royal Garrison Artillery. 18-pounders are quite light artillery. Generally, they are used to fire anti-personnel shells loaded with small shrapnel balls. But prior to the Rising, there was a set of 8 of them based at Athlone. They were there as training units. They were in pretty poor condition. 4 of them were cobbled together and sent over to Dublin and used in various locations during the Easter Rising. Thank you very much. I hope that's been useful. We'll open up a second quiz immediately after this, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. Thank you very much. Speak to you again later.